I'm part of the quarterback world with the Elite 11. So I can remember when Colt
Yep.
was coming up and a variety of different quarterbacks. You obviously had a storied quarterback career as well. We always ask the quarterbacks the same question every summer, which is take me through a time when you had to navigate adversity and how would you describe your love for the game? I'm curious for you as a son of a coach, if you go all the way back and unwind your quarterback journey, when
Yeah.
did it grab you or was it just part of you as you went through your career? And then when have you had to navigate for the first time, you think, that real adversarial moment where you said, okay, I'm going to meet it. I'm going to stare right through it. I'm going to work my way and
Yeah.
find a way to get to the goal.
Well, there's probably been a handful of those kind of situations. But I mean, as far as, coming up through it, my dad was a coach, so I was around the game. I was in practice, on practice fields, in locker rooms and around, athletes and high level athletes. But I also was a multi sport guy in high school all the way through. I mean, I played basketball and basketball was my favorite sport. I mean, my dream when I was in middle school, which is such a time when you're very influential at that age. My dad was an assistant coach at the University of Kentucky, and I fell in love with Kentucky basketball. So my dream, was to go to Kentucky and play basketball. And I was a good high school basketball player, but I was 6'3.5", 6'4", and I was an inside player, and that wasn't going to cut it at that level. And so, football kind of became my course. But I was, I loved baseball too. I was a catcher in baseball and loved it. And um, but kind of fell into it that way that as I got older in high school, I realized football was my best path career wise. As far as the adversity thing, my freshman year at Penn State, um, I got hurt my freshman year, a week before the season started, and I wasn't going to start. We had a senior, kind of a fifth year guy who was waiting his turn after Chuck Fusina, but I was going to play in some situations. I thought, like in 2 minute and some special passing situations, and I broke a bone in my hand in a scrimmage the week before, and it was the first time I've ever been hurt. And I really kind of felt sorry for myself because the team was going on and preparing for the start of the season, and I felt kind of left behind. And so I had to really work through that, just kind of not being a part of the team, on the team but not a part. Came back at the end of that year, and it was a redshirt year then, and practiced on the scout team for the bowl game and those kind of things. And then going into my sophomore season, I was battling for the starting job. And it was myself and Jeff Hostetler. We were in the same quarterback class. He was from Pennsylvania. I was from Ohio. He had two older brothers that had come to Penn State and had been linebackers, actually quarterbacks that were turned into linebackers. And Jeff was a great athlete. And so we battled all through spring, and then we went through fall camp, and it went all the way down to the week of the first game. And Joe Paterno decided Jeff Hostetler was going to be the starting quarterback. And I can remember that whole scenario, and him taking me to a park. Joe picked me up at the dorm, and we sat on a bench, and he explained the decision and the situation, and told me I was going to play, and not to get discouraged. And so, I mean, that was very difficult, because I really wanted to be the starting quarterback. And so for 3 games, Jeff was the starter, and I was kind of the sub. I mean, played some, and then in the fourth game of our sophomore year, I ended up becoming the starting quarterback. But again, that was a 3 4 week process that I had to just kind of deal with and work through. And and it's crazy because in today's world, I think we've lost that a little bit. We've lost that willingness to work and fight and put your head down and say, okay, I must not be good enough. So I've got some work ahead of me, something to do to get where I want to go. It's almost like, whether it's through the transfer portal in college football all the way down to youth sports, there's almost like this too much of this. Well, I'm just going to take my ball and go home, or I'm going to go find another team to be on if things don't go the way I want right away. And I just think that's, unfortunately, I think that's a little too prevalent in our world right now.
I love the detail in which you describe that moment with you and Coach Paterno, because I think for all of us athletes, like we remember these moments that were monumental in our own lives. And I think to your point now, like it is become a transient culture within the sport, but they're still the same 18 to 22-year-old minds that are
Right.
having to navigate these moments. So I'm curious for you, as you recall back to after you were on that park bench, I'd imagine you called your dad, who, as you referenced, was a
Oh
coach.
yeah.
What was that conversation like?
I don't exactly remember the conversation, Yogi, but I mean, just knowing my dad, I know that he would have been very supportive and positive, and just telling me to just keep working. One of my biggest things, my dad, he loves to say, he says it to all my kids, his grandkids and his other grandkids, always talks about hustle, 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 hustle. Whatever you're doing, make sure you're hustling. And so, I think that more than anything, he would have just said to me, don't get down, keep working. Good things happen if you keep working and be patient. And sure enough, it did. And you know what? Things worked out great for Jeff as well. I mean, Jeff transferred to West Virginia at the end of that season, ended up having a great career at West Virginia, won a Super Bowl with the Giants. So it worked out in all respects. But I can remember this too, Yogi. Not to bore you, but at Penn State, and this was unique. I've never been to a practice anywhere in college football that does this, but back in those days, all the first string through third string offense and defense had a different color jersey. So we didn't have numbers on our jerseys, but if you were first team offense, it was a light blue jersey. First team defense had a dark blue jersey. Second team offense had green jerseys. Second team defense had red jerseys. Third team offense had, I think, yellow and maroon on defense. So I mean, it looked like a circus on the practice field early in the year. So, but I can remember, the reason I bring that up is, I remember when I walked in the locker room the Monday of week 4 of the Missouri game. We were getting ready to go play Missouri, and there was a light blue jersey hanging in my locker, and that was the first time that jersey was in my locker. And so, I mean, as heartbroken as I felt, sitting on that park bench with Coach, there was a completely different feeling when I walked into my locker room on Monday before that week 4, and then through my career, I had different moments that I had to navigate through tough times. I mean, I threw a key interception against our arch rival Pitt with 40 seconds left. That sophomore year when I became the starter, and we lost 14-9, and just the agony of that feeling. But it's anybody that plays knows. I mean, there's good days and bad days, and there's great games and bad games. And I left when I left Penn State. I had the career touchdown mark. It's been shattered since then, but at that time I did career passing touchdowns. I also had the career interception total. It just through the years of playing and through 3 years of starting, the ratio got better and better each time.
Growing up in Pennsylvania, I think a big part of the quarterback lore was you and some of the other guys that were drafted in your class, or just
Yeah.
in your era of football. And I think, at least for me, what I fell in love with was the redemption stories.
Hmm.
Injured as a freshman, didn't play the first month of the season, but Todd Blackledge stuck with it. Like, you can imagine the open of the broadcast back in the day. What do you think about the development of that position now, based on the world that we live in
Yeah.
now?
Well, so I think there's kind of two sides to that. The first one is, I think guys now are so much further ahead in terms of their preparation from a skill standpoint. I mean, nobody had quarterback trainers, back in those days. But from a skill standpoint, the mechanics of the position, playing the position, I think guys are way higher, fine tuned and higher prepared. And even from a mental standpoint and their understanding of the game, their understanding of defenses and recognition of defenses, partly because of systems that they play in high school, partly because of, camps like Elite 11 or 7-on-7 leagues or all those different things. We didn't have any of that. And so, and in my day, most of us played in offenses that were run first. I mean, there was some play action pass, there was this and that, but for the most part, they weren't wide open pass first offenses. So I think young quarterbacks and guys going from high school into college are at a much higher level than they were back in those days. But again, I get back to that, the mental toughness, the willingness to, to kind of suck it up if things don't go well right away, and fight through that. I don't know if that's as good as it used to be, but that's not always the case. There are a lot of guys that have fought through. I think, I'm so impressed and can't wait to see what happens in the draft with Cam Ward. I love his story. I mean, this guy was a wing T quarterback in high school, no offers, goes to Incarnate Word, has the right coaching situation there, lights it up, goes to Washington State, and I know people were talking about him when he went there, like, this guy's pretty good. I mean, keep an eye on him, but Washington State's kind of out in the middle of nowhere, right? I mean, they're a little bit off the grid with the mainstream college football, but he has 2 great years. Then he goes to Miami and lights it up. And when you watch him now, I mean, the guy, I'm assuming he's going to be the first quarterback picked in the draft. And I think he's got a chance to be a great pro, but certainly he's had to battle through that and people doubting him, questioning whether he could be a quarterback, play at the highest level. And, he's kind of shown through all of that.
Yeah, we called a couple of his games, Ted and I, back in the day at the Pac-12 when he was at Wazoo, and you could just tell he had this uniqueness to him. But if he had another year to develop, and he had that, and to your point now, number one pick, potentially millions and millions of dollars. I mean, it's totally changed his life. A guy who was a 0-star recruit with his dad begging D3 schools to give him an opportunity. I love that. What it sparks a memory for me is I've covered the Heisman last handful of years. And the last 2 years, when you look at the quarterbacks that have been on that stage, their journeys have all been definitely not what they anticipated when they showed up as a young freshman like you did back in the day. And when Michael Penix Jr., Bo Nix, Jaden Daniels, 2 years ago, you think of this past year and Dylan Gabriel and what he has had to navigate in his career. And I think that there's a common thread for those young men is that they kind of played early in their career, and then it was challenging. I worry about these quarterbacks that come out, big time recruits. We see it all the time now with Elite 11. And now because of the portal, a lot of these elite quarterbacks aren't necessarily getting a ton of offers. Like we had an Elite 11 quarterback 2 years ago, Todd, that ended up having to walk on to a Power 4 school just because of like, hey, we're going to go get a couple transfers. And I just think that the development in high school is elite, to your point. But I wonder about those first 2 years in college, and not the coaching, but of the player in their community saying, let's go develop. Because when I kick out of this thing, God, I'm going to have a great opportunity. And I wonder if moving forward, it'll be like, let me go play at La Tech as a freshman
Yeah.
because I will play and then transfer. Or, hey, I'm going to go sit and learn.